Hello and welcome to episode 149 of Controller Club, the friendly face gaming space, a podcast where three friends from three different continents share in one love, and that is video games, or in the case of today, video game adaptations. That is right. On today's show, The Last of Us Season 2 is here, and we will be reviewing episode 1 of Season 2. But before we get to all that, I'd like to introduce myself as well as my illustrious co host here today. My name is Kleinfeld, and alongside me today, only one of my best friends in the whole wide gaming world, our other co-host Tom Drew, is feeling a little under the weather, but that is okay. We have the journalist extraordinaire, the Australian abroad, the number one Last of Us fan that I know. It is Lauren Rouse. Lauren, how are you? How are things? How is it being back in the post-apocalypse?
It feels so good. I'm just so excited that we're here again. It's been 2 years. It was a quick 2 years, I suppose, but it felt long in terms of gaps between The Last of Us, and I'm very excited that we're back and that we're doing this again for another season.
Season 2, you have you witnessed it live. You saw some of the filming and stuff like nothing that we've seen yet so far, but I
No,
assume. I assume.
no,
But
nothing yet.
you did get to see production over in Vancouver, which is very exciting. Yeah. Today we will be reviewing episode 1 of season 2, Future Days, right? That's the title. It didn't
Future
have the title when
Days.
I looked at it yesterday because they don't add the title until after like a couple hours after it's up, but Future Days is what it's called, right?
Future Days, yes. Very big homage to the game there.
Mhm. Mhm. Doesn't make it makes even less sense, the Future Days Pearl Jam thing, but we'll get to that when we get to it in this universe. Lauren, I'm going to hand you the keys to the kingdom here, give you the steering wheel because you're going to be leading our Cordyceps Club review coverage here. So let's get into it. It's why you're all here. The Last of Us Season 2, take it away.
Yes, welcome back to season 2 of Cordyceps Club, which is where we essentially rename ourselves to review HBO's The Last of Us because Tom Klein and I are all big fans of Last of Us game. We loved season 1. You can listen to our sort of season 1 recap and primer from last week. We went through our predictions and our thoughts on the first season. And now it's here, so we get to talk about it. So Last of Us season 2, 7 episodes, same creatives behind it, many of the same actors adapting the second game from Naughty Dog. Much larger game. We got the news this week that season 3 of The Last of Us is happening, which is very exciting, which means that they'll hopefully. There was even talk of perhaps a season 4, but I don't think they've completely outlined how they're going to tell the rest of the story because we don't even know how much they're going to cover in this season. But very exciting news is that there will be more. So whenever we get to the finale of season 2, it's not the end. Um, and yeah, first episode about an hour. Oh, and I should mention that reviews also came out this week, so some critics got to screen all the episodes, and reviews have been pretty glowing. I think it's on 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's just slightly lower than season 1, but overall, it's looking to be another very good season. So before we get into a full recap of events, Klein, how do you feel about the first episode overall?
I I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good about the season so far. I'm feeling good about the first episode. I was in a weird headspace coming into this. Like, I don't know if I was excited for season 1. And I've been excited for the marketing beats leading into season 2, but like it wasn't until I was driving home yesterday about half an hour before it started that I was like, "Oh my gosh, like we're getting The Last of Us season 2 today. Like it's actually happening." And so sitting down and watching it, I think general thoughts about episode 1, I think it was a kind of subdued episode of TV. Like there wasn't the thing that The Last of Us season 1 I think had as a quote unquote benefit, if you want to call it that, was you had the like the Sarah moment there in the first episode, and that is such an explosive emotional bang that like I don't think season 2 had something quite on the heights of that. There were some great moments. We did get some like amazing beats here that I was like, "Oh wow, we're doing this here." But I think that I enjoyed it. I wasn't blown away by it. I think I was blown away by certain elements of it, but I am like I don't know if this is a 10 out of 10 premiere for me. I think that this is just like kind of like okay, like we're kind of getting back in the gear of things as a viewer. Maybe if I rewatched it, I may be higher on it. But like right now, coming off of it, watching it one time, it was kind of like, oh yeah, like this is what this is what this sweater I haven't put on for 2 years feels like, and I'm still kind of like adjusting to that. But I did overall enjoy it. I don't think I'm quite as high on it as I was on the season one premiere at all.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I've seen sort of similar sentiment that I think when you look overall at the structure of The Last of Us Part 2, you kind of had to ease into it a little bit. There's a lot to catch up on. There is a 5-year time jump. And they really needed to spend, I think, an episode laying the groundwork. And I think they kind of did that to the best level that they could without it being like, a cut and dry drama that's kind of like, yeah, very like no sci-fi apocalyptic elements. Um, but I'm with you. I just feel it's just so nice to have The Last of Us back. Like, let me tell you, Last of Us nights are an event in my household. So I had people over for like a screening party. I was lucky enough to receive a screener for this episode. So I had seen episode one prior to it airing last night, which, helps me just like prep content for work and also just like get a handle on it without sort of like being wrapped up in the screening party. But we did have a party, and it's interesting because of the people I invited over, I'm the only one who has played the game and kind of knows what's happened and how invested I am in it. And so there was it was just interesting to hear my friends' reactions to things and how they're seeing the story. And I might reference it a little bit as we're talking, because as a fan of the game, I can only really come at it from that standpoint. Like, I already am so invested in this world and I know it so deeply that I just sort of forget certain things that, like, oh, people might not know who this is or what's going to happen, and that this is actually doing this from the game. So that's kind of where we can only really come from it. But I will try and like talk about some of their reactions so we can kind of see what maybe some
Yeah.
people who aren't so familiar with it. Like,
I
did
think
Gabby watch it with you?
yeah, so Gabby was in, that's why I wanted to like jump in. She knows nothing. Like she said something when we were watching it yesterday when we were introduced to Caitlin Deaver's character Abby, one of the new additions, and she said, "Oh, I thought she was supposed to be buffer." And so she
Oh.
has, I guess, some sort of like context there, but other than that, like has no idea. And I think that one of the reasons that maybe I am like not completely in love with the premiere is the fact that I, like you, am so intimately familiar with this story, and I'd be interested to go back and listen to my thoughts from the premiere of season 1, and maybe I was feeling the same way there, but it just getting back into that mode of like, "Oh, yeah, like, this isn't going to be a exact retelling of the thing I'm so familiar with." And so when things are happening and characters introduced and it's like, "Oh, but this is happening like before this and we're doing this
Mm,
here. How is that going to impact?" And I think that I was almost like overanalyzing it. Whereas I think Gabby was like, when we finished it last night, she was completely like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Like, I'm so happy to be back with these characters. I love the new characters. Yeah, the world is terrifying and we meet some
mm.
terrifying new things in this world, but like she was completely just like off the wall." So maybe it is like maybe my Last of Us fandom is almost actually like holding me back. And when we get into episode 2 and episode 3 and we really start to like, okay, like settle back into what Last of Us TV show is as opposed to the games, I'll completely fall head over heels again.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I'm also going through that separation of like, I want to enjoy this as a fan of a game of the games, and when certain things happen, I do get that excitement of being like, because we know that they can do it, right? We talked about it last week. They handled the season one very well. It was very satisfying. Like, we know what we're getting, and this is very much the same. It's more of the same. They're following the same formula. It feels right. So now you kind of go into a mode of sort of analyzing the parts that are the same and the parts that are different as fans of the game. And so I'm trying to separate that as also being like, but the show is its own thing. And it's kind of a difficult process, but I am trying to approach it this season of being like, let me look at this through the storytelling angle and not so much of like, oh, every little change is frustrating or I wish it had gone that way because I mean we'll talk about it at the end of the show, but like I'm playing the game along with this, so I'm kind of getting that parallel view, and so I'm really seeing them diverge as two different entities, and I'm okay with that. So yeah, but let's just talk about the episode. We kick off things in season one, episode two, titled Future Days, with basically a reminder of what happened at the end of season 1. We get a little bit of an extended look at the scene between Joel and Ellie before they go down to Jackson, where Ellie says, swear to me that everything you said was true. And he says, I swear. And she says, okay. And get a little bit of a look, because it cuts there usually on Ellie, and we get a bit of a look at Joel's reaction to that of like, does she believe me? Does she not? Because essentially this scene, and I will note, we'll go into spoilers definitely of this episode, and we may touch on scenes from the game. So if you don't potentially want to know what might happen in the season, maybe come back to this at the end or something like that. But we know that this scene is like huge for what's setting up the rest of this story. It's pivotal. But anyway, that's basically a recap, and then we move straight to this new group of characters, and this is where we are introduced to Abby and the Salt Lake City crew, which consists of Owen, Mel, Nora, Manny. And so they are basically in the aftermath of what happened at the hospital last season. They are fireflies, and they have just a row of graves in front of them. And Abby is talking about how she wants to go after Joel and get revenge on him for what he did. And we can see that there's like this group is lost. They've lost everybody in the hospital. Their fireflies are gone. They're talking about maybe going to. They've heard of like this guy called Isaac in Washington who might take them in. And you can see that Abby and Owen have a bit of a close relationship, and she's kind of calling on them to go after Joel and get revenge. She wants to kill him, and she wants to kill him slowly. And so this is basically our first introduction to Abby, which is different to how she's introduced in the game, because we don't get this scene until much later in the game. And so it's worth just sort of stopping here to talk about Abby and the Salt Lake City crew. How did you feel about Caitlin Dever's introduction?
I I think that it was something that they had to do. Um, and I did like it. I really like Caitlin Dever's Abby. We only got tastes of it in the trailers. Her immediately, I'm like, okay, I can believe that we get to where we get to with this character from this moment. Um, and it was kind of a little shocking to me. It reminded me a lot of that first opening scene of season 1, where it's like you kind of get the explanation of the cordyceps virus on that like talk show set, and it's like, whoa, like we are doing something very different. Like this is not the game. Like we are venturing into uncharted territory. So I liked this. I really like this introduction of the crew and the team, and it does make you kind of think like, okay, you are doing the smart thing. I kind of said, I think it was last week during the primer, that they would have to do something like this, just because I don't know how you set the groundwork for this character without like immediately off the bat setting it up. And I'm interested to see like what other moments from her and from other people's pasts we weave in when we do, because now like the flashback thing is all bets are off. Anything can happen. So I really liked it. I want more of the crew, because at
Mm.
first with the crew themselves, you get a lot of Abby there. You get the, I'm gonna kill him slowly, like that. But like Owen and stuff like that, it is very
Yeah.
just like, oh, like it's I don't want to say milk toast, but it's just like very very stock dialogue of them going back and forth with her,
Yeah.
and we don't really get a good read on who they are. Like I don't even think Manny doesn't even say anything. It's like there's an
Yeah.
Avenger just like standing right over
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
we're gonna get more. I know we will. It just
Yeah.
in this moment, it's like, oh, okay, this is Abby's scene.
Exactly. They don't have a lot of time, and it needs to be spent on her. And these are characters that obviously will become very important later on. And similar to the game, they're faceless kind of people at this point. So you could, if you know who they are, you can kind of get a read. You can see that Mel's like kind of objecting to, like, she's everything, all is lost. The stories of this immune girl perhaps aren't true because it's not possible. It's like she's a practical and pragmatist, pragmatic,
She's
pragmatic.
pragmatic. I like something I do want to mention. I really, really liked that, like that specific note in that conversation they have about Ellie. The like
Yeah.
she was whatever, and like no, we don't know that, and like I love this kind of like myth making that surrounds Ellie, and we get bits of it
Yes.
in The Last of Us Part 2 in the game, but, like, I don't think that, like, they really, really lean into it, like, she never really becomes the boy who lives, like, sorta thing, like, but there are
Yeah, yeah.
mentions of it, and I like that we're setting that up in the show because I hope that that's something we get more, because we see more of it in the game later where she meets characters and, like, how you, like,
Yeah, you're her.
you're the one, um, and I think that that's cool that they're kinda laying that foundation here, so then when we do get later down the road, it does feel a bit more like, "Oh, she's kind of become like a legend almost."
Yeah, because Ellie's immunity is kind of more of a superpower this time around. Like we see it a lot in action. Obviously, they're trying to keep it under wraps for reasons like this. But it is interesting, and it's interesting what that has done to Ellie, which we'll get to. Um, just my note on Abby. I'm very. I think Caitlin Dever did a lot with a little in a very short amount of time. I'm very excited to see where she goes from there. I was a little. The person I'm not sold on the most is Owen at this point.
Yeah.
Again, he didn't have a much to do, but I'm not sold on him because he's very. I mean, it's a somber moment that they're having, but Owen is one of those characters who is just effortlessly funny and charming. Um, and I can see that in this moment he's just being supportive and trying to be there for Abby. But I need more of him to try and just like ascertain that Spencer Lord is doing what
Yeah.
is
Yeah, I found him
required.
very plain in that moment. It's just
Yeah.
kind of like I feel like anyone I didn't even realize that was Owen until kinda after it had happened. I was like, "Oh, like, I didn't get a good first impression of this person in this role at all." It was just kinda like anyone could have been delivering that dialogue.
Yeah. But I'm also with you in that I think this did need to happen right now to frame the show. Because I just read a few reviews, and a lot of people are saying that, and I think it might come in later episodes, the certain revelation of information doesn't hit as hard because of how explanatory they are of certain moments, which I know some people had an issue with in season one as well. I don't personally, because really the art of the game is that you're playing as these characters, you're going through things with them as them, so that just inherently you're connected to them, and it's so hard to do that in a TV show. So I think to kind of paint Abby as a bit of a sympathetic character to begin with is kind of necessary, and to also set up this threat that is coming for Joel. These people, like his actions have repercussions, and these people want to kill him for what he did. And it's a violent world, and this is how it works. So I think it was like the right way to start the show. But from there, we jump ahead 5 years, and we start with Ellie, who is in just like a sparring scene in the barn. She's fighting this like much larger guy, and she's doing pretty well. She does get punched in the face, but she basically gets the win on him, and she's right in the zone. It looks like she's going to even just break his arm. She can't stop herself until Jesse comes in and says, "Hey, that's enough. Cut it out." Um, Jesse reveals that he was pulling his punches because I told him to, because he's worried about annoying Joel. So clearly, we get this kind of immediately established that Joel Joel is someone not to be messed with in the community, and no one wants to mess him up. And they know that Ellie is connected to Joel. We get a look at Jackson, the town. 5 years later, it is thriving, very nice and snowy. They've like built a thriving community. They are expanding even quicker than they can keep up with like bringing in all these people into their community, and it kind of they've got this little like slice of paradise in this mountain town during the apocalypse. Um, we get a scene with Ellie and Tommy, who are sniping infected from the side of a mountain. Again, another moment from the game that happens much a bit later in the game, but they've pulled it forward here, which I thought was quite effective. Ellie is very much there's these two scenes that happen quite close to each other where you see Ellie is just really she's pretty like bloodthirsty. She likes getting into fights. She likes it when she gets a headshot on the infected. She's pretty formidable in the time since we've last seen her. Um, so how do we feel about Ellie like 5 years later? Particularly, between the first and second game, like Ellie's character design changes a fair bit. And so there was a lot of questions going about like how would this go on screen when Bella Ramsey hasn't aged 5 years. She is closer to in age to Ellie now than she was in season one. But what do you think?
I like that you can tell this is a different Ellie. I've seen I mean, I'm not going to bring in dumb internet commenters in here, but I have seen some people asking how are we going to do this, because she is like Bella plays young almost all the time. Like she's they're very their face, like they have this like very childlike look. And so I was wondering how we're going to do that. And I think that we accomplished it immediately by showing us that this is a different Ellie, maybe not in looks 100%, but in mindset and mentality. We got moments of brutality with Ellie last season, but the most brutal moments we got were met with like very clear emotional strife on her part. Like the David stuff in season 1, and her like I think back to the game itself, in the first game, the first time she has to kill somebody when they're drowning Joel. Those are all big moments, whereas all this violence, all this, like, she's now hardened, she is now calloused, and she is now like all of it. We get moments of it later when we get to the supermarket and stuff. This is all very casual. It's almost run of the mill to her. It's just like, this is the world that I live in, and she's grown. She doesn't have that twinkle in her eye like we do see in that final scene in season 1, where like even just showing that to start the season I think was very smart, because you do get an instant contrast to like, oh, like that childlike wonder and that like innocence is gone now. Like it's completely gone. There might be a sliver of it left, and over the season it may or may not disappear. But I do think that Bella played this, like, this is a different Ellie to me, and I can see it and I can feel it. Like, it does feel older, and she's dealing with like older things, and the being the teenager in the garage, like season 1 Ellie would never do that. So
Hmm.
I think that they did a good job of, they didn't age her up. Make like, maybe there's some different makeup going on, but not a ton to make it look like so much older. But it's just the way
I
she
think
like
it's the
holds
hair.
herself. The hair does a lot,
The
and the
hairstyle
even
makes her seem
the
older.
clothes too, I
Yeah,
found were
yeah.
much like more
Less like
workwear,
kid
more
like
practical.
graphic
Yeah.
tees. Yeah. Agree. I agree. I felt like this was it's not the same Ellie from the game, but it was the natural progression for this character they've built in the show and for Bella's performance of Ellie. Um so I think it works. And I lost my train of thought. So I'm sure we'll come back to Ellie at some point. Anyway, moving on. After this, we also get introduced to another new character, which is Dina. And this is a scene between Joel and Dina where Dina comes in to be like, "Hey, you're our foreman. What's going on?" Because as we know, Joel was in construction before the apocalypse, and he's basically been put in charge of the expansion of the town. And they've been like digging up the main lines and stuff to try and prepare for expanding and make building new buildings, and they've found like that they're full of roots and cracks, and so that's a problem. Anyway, and so Dina comes in and finds that Joel is playing around with a circuit breaker, I think it is, and she basically asks him to teach her, which he does. He's in full dad mode, which I love. We love Daddy Pedro Pascal. And she starts to kind of pry at why Joel and Ellie aren't, like, something's up that she's noticed. And she's like, why is she mad at you? And he's like, oh, you've noticed. And he kind of just puts it down to being like, hey, she's 19. I'm not really her dad, but I kind of am. I thought it was natural. And then he makes a comment and she picks up that he's like being in therapy, which he asks for no one. He doesn't ask. He asks her not to tell anyone. Thoughts on Dina in this scene, and the fact that we have a scene between Dina and Joel, which we don't have in the game.
No, we don't. And we get teases of it in the game that they have some sort of relationship, but we never get this. And I was
Hmm.
really happy with Dina's introduction, because the door swings open, and you can go listen. The Last of Us podcast has started up again, and they talked about this. Like, the first thing he says is like, "Hey, baby girl," when the door swings open, and
Kiddo.
you as a viewer are like, it's Ellie, and it isn't. It's Dina, so you can tell that, okay, like, there's a rapport here. There's like a relationship going on. And I think that, like, of all the new characters, I mean, we're going to be spending the most time with Isabella probably. Um her portrayal of Dina was incredible. She is the MVP of this episode. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this whole thing she is like the MVP of my season 2. She was just instantly on screen. It is a different take on Dina, but a lot of the same touchstones are there. This is a like she does definitely feel younger than the Dina we get in the games, but I still like I still believe everything that's happening with her. And I the Dina in the games, I could tell was like she's a firecracker, and like she was like there were moments of like the dance scene we get later where okay, like she's popular and desired and people want to be around her. But I don't know if I ever believed that version of Dina to be that person. This is very
Mm.
clearly like, she is the most popular quote unquote like young woman in this town, and everyone just is like magnetically drawn to her, and you can instantly see in Ellie that like, oh, but she's my best friend, but nothing more will ever come of that. Like I'm lucky just to even have this like friendship with this person. And I thought that Isabella was she was just so charismatic on screen immediately. Her back and forth with Pedro. I like that the first thing we get of Joel this season isn't him stabbing a dude in the neck. It's not like what's he doing? He's got glasses on and he's tinkering away with like some circuit breakers. He has kind of like almost stepped back and like given up his like survivor role because he has felt so safe, I guess, in this like kind of fantasy that he's built after the end of season one. And he's just like, this is what I do now. I fix circuit breakers. I play around with the pipes under the city. And so, yeah, I think that to bring it back to Dean, I think that her getting to interact with Pedro first was like really, really cool for us game fans. And it was a great way to kind of introduce us to this character for the first time.
Yeah, it's the kind of content that you're as a fan of the game, you're like, "Oh, this is so nice. It's something new. It makes me excited." It's like getting like an extra chapter to the story, like a behind the scenes look that you didn't get before. I totally agree. Isabella Merced is just like a standout in the whole episode. I think she's going to be very, very exciting to follow as Dina. I liked that she was shown learning about technology because she's quite good at it in the game, and we kind of just it's like alluded to that she was taught before, but now we actually get to see, oh, this is something that Joel taught her, and it was a great character moment for them both. And I also found it interesting. It was just crazy because you can tell time has passed because Joel, the previous Joel, would never be caught dead talking about his feelings. And so you can just tell how he has changed and like how I guess therapy is changing him because he was straight up about how he felt about things, even though he wasn't saying the truth of why he and Ellie have fallen out. He was kind of open with her and then enough to be like she picked up that he was in therapy, and the fact that he's even going to therapy is like a huge step for Joel, who is someone who is so closed off. Obviously he opened up a little bit more by the end of last season, but thought that was quite interesting. So there's an extra scene where we learn a little bit about the expansion of the town with Joel and Tommy and Maria. We meet Tommy and Maria's son Benji. He's a 5-year-old now. He was not born in the previous season. He was not even a thought in the game. He did not exist. But he's like a cute little kid. And yeah, basically the town is dealing with this problem of they're accepting too many people. Joel wants them to just like look after their own first, but Maria kind of reminds him that, hey, you're a refugee too. So imagine if we didn't, take you in. And then there's a scene shortly after this with Joel going to therapy. We actually get to see him interact with the therapist named Gail, who is played by Catherine O'Hara. This is a new character invented for the show. And it's quite an interesting dynamic because he walks in and she is drunk, she is sad. She reveals that it's her birthday and it's her first birthday without her husband, Eugene. Red flags went up for people who know the game because Eugene is a character who is kind of alluded to. He's dead in the game. He died of a stroke, apparently, but was one of Dina's mentors and one of the ex Fireflies in the town. And in the show, he's also dead, but Gail reveals that she knows that Joel is responsible for Eugene's death, that he shot and killed him. And she's trying to forgive him for it. But in this moment, when she's like sad without her husband, she just can't. And so in return, she's asking Joel to just say what's wrong. What did you do to Ellie? We've been through this conversation 100 times and we're getting nowhere. How about you just tell me what actually happened? And Joel kind of looks like he wants to tell her, but he can't. And he just says, I saved her. that's what he did. And I have to say, in this moment, when like one single tear rolled out of Pedro's eye at the moment that he said, "I saved her," I was like, "There's your Emmy, sir. Well done." How do you feel about Gail and Joel and even Eugene?
Super cool introduction, bringing this new character in that they've Craig Mazin, Neil Druckmann, creators behind this show, have talked about like what would be the most in-demand job in a post-apocalyptic like society like this, and it's therapists, because
Mm.
everyone is dealing with a whole lot of terrible trauma living in this literal hellscape. And I love Catherine O'Hara, Canadian Queen. They said on the
Yeah.
Last of Us podcast, I'm going to keep going back to it because it is just like such a cool resource for this show. They're talking about how like I think it was the creator of Breaking Bad, who is Vince Gilligan, has said that like the best dramatic actors are comedic actors, and that's why he ended up hiring Bryan Cranston, sitcom dad, to be Walter White
Yeah.
in Breaking Bad, and like Catherine O'Hara out here killing it immediately, and very very cool ties to the game. I was like that. This is when I like sat on the edge of my seat and was like, oh, okay, Eugene didn't really get too big of a backstory beforehand. I'm now wondering, and I think we can pontificate here because we will probably get answers at some point. Was he bitten? Is that why? Like Joel's not just murdering this man, right? Like,
Mm.
was he bitten? Did Joel have to put him down? And so that's why she's like upset that he killed him, but like
Yeah.
also was kind of like accepting that like something had to be done. Was he very sick and he put him out of his misery? Like, I'm interested. What do you think happened with Eugene here?
I went the same route as you. I felt that he must have been bitten, and that's why she, yeah, she knew that he had killed him and had to just make peace with it. And I can accept that, like, she would still be mad at him because that's your
Oh
husband's
yeah.
killer, but of course it had to be done. So the only reason I could think of was that he was infected. However, I don't think that's the actual reason. I think that's the
Oh,
reason that the town believes. But I think there's another reason, which we kind of talked about in our theories last week. I think Eugene has a bit of a bigger purpose in the story. We know that he's going to
oh,
show up in the show. He's
yeah.
got an actor cast. Um, and so I wonder if I don't know how, but I just think he has some kind of tie to either Abby's group or as an ex-Firefly or to the secret of Ellie potentially getting out. And I just feel like
And
Joel
he,
may have had another reason for killing him.
yeah, had to tie up a loose end. That's fascinating to me if that is the case, especially the way that this Joel is living his life, where it does feel like he has like almost thought of what happened at the end of season 1 as like, "I did it. I
Mm.
won. Everything's fine. And
Yeah,
now
no more.
I told the lie. She said okay, and yeah, in the moment I did have a little twinkle in my eye that said, maybe she doesn't believe me, but I think we're both just gonna brush it under the rug for a couple of years." And he
Yeah,
is
maybe we
very
can
much
get
living
past
his
this.
right, like he's living his life right now as if nothing happened. And if they were to introduce this, if this is her first birthday, that means this has happened in the last year. That means that like these feelings, this reminder of this like very messy past of Joel's that he is seemingly left in the background has come up in the last few months, and that to me makes this kind of facade that Joel's putting on even more of exactly that, a facade, and not like, oh, he's genuinely feeling these ways. It'd be
Mm.
interesting.
Because with everything that's been happening in the show, it feels like whatever falling out Joel and Ellie had was kind of recent.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's that way in the game as well. I know that Ellie has a bit of a different design, but it was a little unclear how many years, what point in the 5 years it had happened.
I
Did
wrote
you
an
look it up?
article on the direct.com today. You can go read it, called "Why Does Ellie Hate Joel?" or "Why is Ellie Mad at Joel in The Last of Us Season 2?" It was 2 years before the events of the game
Interesting.
that the
So it's been simmering for
confrontation,
a while in
it's
the
been
game
simmering for a
then.
while, that the confrontation between them happens, and it's like things really blow up. So maybe
Yeah.
I that's what I'm fascinated in timeline, and I need to go back and play the game again to see just like, is there another, I'm trying to remember if there's another beat somewhere in there that like does something happen, or has she completely distanced herself from him for so long, and like maybe that's when she moves into the garage, she's doing her own thing for a while, and it's just continued to like burble to the surface, and then
Mm.
this push at the New Year's Eve dance is like the last straw of her going, okay, like you need to stop doing this. But yeah, that's why I was
I'm not
curious
sure.
about
It just
it
feels like it's
feels in
recent in the show,
it
the way they're
does.
talking about it. So
Mhm.
maybe that's something they'll have changed, because 2 years feels like a long time to have this falling out and to not have had it resolved. But we will find out. The interesting thing about trying to play the game along with the show this season is that it's really difficult because
Oh,
it
yeah,
jumps
I could
around all the
imagine.
time. I think the best thing I'm gonna have to do is just play it all and then hope that this I get up to where the series does. But moving on. So from this scene, we have some more stuff with Ellie. She has been talked herself out of going onto Gatewatch, which was another thing that Joel was like insisting to try and keep her safe. And she's like, no, no, put me back on patrol. So she's going on a patrol with Dina and some of the others. There's a great scene where Dina comes to like pick her up for patrol, and there's like some like light flirting between them, which is where you get the sense that Ellie's quite into her, but Dina's just kind of suave, so you don't know if it's reciprocated. They line up for this patrol where they're like getting a lecture from Jesse. We are introduced to Kat, who is the patrol leader. Gonna like just have a small insert here, which is that Kat is another character from the game who was only ever mentioned as like Ellie's ex-girlfriend who gave her the tattoo on her forearm, which we haven't even talked about. But yeah, Ellie has a big cool ass tattoo on her arm now to cover the bite mark.
It looks
Um,
so cool.
it does. It looks great. So Kat's the patrol leader. We actually get to see her in person. And during the briefing, like, it's clear that Ellie and Dina, they're best friends. They're just mucking around. They just want to get going. They're very gung ho. Jesse says, "Come, this is a recon patrol only. Come back if you see anything dangerous." And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, whatever. Let us go." So they do. They go on this patrol, and pretty shortly into it, well, actually, firstly, Dina and Ellie are having a bit of a back and forth about like, "Hey, you going to the dance tonight? Are you bringing anyone?" And they're kind of like talking a little about their relationships. And it was this kind of moment where in like compounding with some of the previous ones where I was like, this is so nice. It's just like teenagers in the apocalypse. I'm loving this like kind of like rom-com teen drama vibe. I could kind of live in this for a while. Can we just stay here and like not get to what else is going to happen? Because I was really enjoying it, particularly when you know what's going to happen. You're just like, let me live here for a bit. But I did appreciate these moments. And yeah, pretty shortly after this, they come across a grizzly bear that has been taken down by infected. And Kat's immediately like, let's go back, let's get help. But Ellie and Dina are very much like, we can handle it. Let's just keep going. And so they see these bloody tracks leading into the supermarket, and decide to go ahead and investigate it, even though Kat says they shouldn't. They just disobey her and go in by themselves. There's this great kind of back and forth between them where they're like, should we go in? Should we get help? No, let's break the rules. We can handle it. Who wants to let the men handle it? Which I thought was awesome. They have a great like I guess like sign language between them, like a made up language of like, okay, there's one clicker and you're gonna go and kill that one, and I'm gonna go kill this one. And I have written in my notes in all capitals, Ellie throws a bottle.
I wrote it down, bottle count 1. We didn't
Bottle.
get one last year or last season. We finally did. We finally got it. And when it happened, I
Justice for
freaked
the
out.
bricks and
And
bottles.
Gabby's like, "What's going on?" I was like, "This is 90% of the game. You're just throwing
I
bottles at
know.
walls and running
I
away."
know. Even one of my friends who I think he's played the first game but not the second, he's like, that was a nice touch with the bottle. I was like, bro, I've been waiting for this for so long. So that was very exciting. Throws a bottle, and she takes down the clicker again, very similar style to how it's done in the game. It's interesting that they just kind of threw a clicker in here because it was such a big lead up to the moment in season one that now they're just like kind of they're not even the most exciting thing. Um, but that's because Ellie falls through the floor and meets the next big exciting thing, which is, yeah, she falls through the floor of the supermarket. Dina can't get down to her, so she goes to look for a way around. And Ellie thinks she's down in this lower level of the supermarket by herself. And it's soon apparent that this is not the case because she's walking between the aisles and this thing just follows her in the background. It's moving on all fours. It's very quiet. She doesn't know that it's there. And it's a great little horror sequence the way they constructed this. And I remember like the entire room who was watching with me were like just hiding behind their hands. It was so scary. And I forget sometimes because I've played the game that, oh yeah, this is kind of scary. But I think the game has hardened me to the point where I was like, oh yeah, I know what's about to happen. But I was still very thrilled. Um, and so this creature, this type of infected, it kind of watches her and follows her. And then when Ellie sees it, by these like moans that it makes, it looks at her and she kind of taunts it to have it run at her, and it just runs away like a freaking spider. It disappears when you're not looking. Um, and we see that this is like it's a smart infected. It's not one that just like is the hive mind and will just run at anything that moves. It watches, it waits. It waits for Ellie to walk past, and then it attacks her and it bites her in the struggle. So it's still clearly very strong and dangerous. Thankfully, Ellie's immune, so that doesn't matter. But there's a bit of a struggle. It doesn't look good, but she does eventually take it down. Stalkers, they're in the show. How do we feel?
Great introduction. Love the up on the top of the kind of like shelving units behind her in the first shot. You just see this thing that was very, very still get up and start walking away. Is like, oh no, here we are. They're freaky. I have written down in my notes in this whole sequence, I loved immediately how seasoned, and this is again leading to the like leaning into the change of how Bella's playing this version of Ellie, how seasoned she is when it comes to the infected. A
Yeah.
clicker is the most terrifying thing we saw in, well, I guess we saw a bloater in
Yeah.
season 1, but like clickers are terrifying and they're meant to be terrifying. And the fact that they're so casually just like, we're going to take it down. And so to immediately juxtapose that with like this thing that it very, very quickly becomes evident that Ellie is terrified of what's happening with this stalker. And so as a viewer, you're sitting there going, oh, like this must mean like this means something because I just saw that the scariest thing from last season was nothing, and now this is like scaring her, so I should be scared as well. And this was like for the people last season, there were complaints about there's not enough infected in the zombie show. This was like this to me felt so Last of Us, just like skulking around. You don't know what's gonna happen. I made the joke to Gabby when it was happening. I'm like, just bend down and use your like eagle vision and like look through the walls. Um,
But no, you
but
can't see
can't
them with listen mode.
you can't see the stalkers, but yeah, it was so freaky. I love the detail of her getting bit again because it
Yeah.
does remind you of like, oh yeah, like it's not as a big deal as it would be for someone else. And then she
Yeah,
like
but they're
cuts it.
dangerous.
It's gross. But
Yeah, she has to like mask that she got bitten by yeah, cutting her own wound.
mhm. But yeah, I like this. This to me was like this was the xenomorph in the
Yeah.
space, like in the spaceship in Alien. Like this is
Yes.
about as scary, and making it I thought there were going to be a couple of them, but making it just the one made it like just like even more scarier and had that impact really
Oh,
heightened.
I'm sure it won't be the last one that we
Oh
see.
no. No, 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 no.
uh yeah, I'm with you. I was like, this was the moment where I was just like, they're doing The Last of Us. Like this is exactly how it feels like to play the game. And oh, it's my mailbox. Where you are just kind of in a room and you just hear a little like "Ugh," in the background. You're like, what was that? And nothing. You turn around, nothing's there, and they will just run at you in the dark. They'll peer at you around corners, and you can see their eyes glowing. Like they are just some of the freakiest things I've ever come across in games, and that really translated here. And judging by everyone who was watching it with me, it got to them as well. So that was like a really great sequence. Um, so shortly after this, Ellie explains her situation with the infected. The other thing to note about the stalker with its like intelligence is it kind of, I guess it knocks Ellie down a peg because she's at this point being like, we've handled worse than this before. Like you say, she's very seasoned. She is kind of like, nothing can touch me. And then this kind of, I think, like, is a bit of a reality check because actually, yes, there are infected, they are dangerous. And even though you're immune, like, they could have just killed you by biting out your throat. There's no surviving that. So I think that was like kind of needed at this point in the story. And I liked that this kind of terrifying sequence and introduction to this new infected had was also a big character moment for her. But after this little horror sequence, we're right back into the teen rom com. We're at the New Year's Eve dance. It's New Year's Eve 2029. 2029. Yeah,
Yep,
that's what it
2029.
says.
26 years after the outbreak day.
Yeah, which was 2004.
2003 in the show,
Okay.
and then
Yeah, sure.
2013 in the game.
Cool. Yeah. So, again, a scene that we get quite late in the game, but I know that Neil has said that this scene was originally meant to be at the beginning of the game. So for the series, they've pulled it forward chronologically. And yeah, this Jackson is having a New Year's Eve party. There is a live band playing, who I'll point out is actually Crooked Still, the band who plays the songs that are played during the game, playing for real in the show, which I thought was a really nice touch. And the ukulele player is Gustavo Santaella, the show's composer. When he was in the show, I was like, oh my God. I stood up. This was like my favorite thing ever that they got him in there. Um, so really good. Another really great shout out for fans of the game. And Ellie's kind of there, but she doesn't really want to be there. She's kind of watching from the sidelines. Meanwhile, Dina dancing up a storm, having a great time. Um, Jesse comes by. He's not really having a great time either. Is kind of watching. They're both kind of enviously watching Dina, which like reinforces that whole love triangle. And then at some point, Dina comes over, asks Ellie for a dance, reveals that she's pretty drunk and pretty high, um, but still wants to dance with her. It's quite an intimate moment. The music is again the same from the game, which is really nice. And Ellie's a little insecure. She's like, everyone's looking at you. All the guys are looking at you. And Dina says, oh, what if they're looking at you? And Ellie's like, they're not. And there's
I'm not
like
a
a
threat.
great, yeah, exactly, which is a little slight twist on how they said it in the game, but I think works. And they have a kiss scene, and then they're interrupted by homophobic Seth, is his new name, who's like, hey, this is a family event. Like, go to church, dykes. And Ellie's ready to punch this guy in the face, but she doesn't get there because Joel intervenes, shoves this guy to the ground. It's a big scene. Everyone's like, holy shit, what did he just do? And Joel asks Ellie, hey, are you okay? Kind of expecting to be like, thanks for her for like blocking this homophobe. And she's like, what is wrong with you? Like, I don't need your help. And so that really reinforces just how deep this divide goes between them now. That he's tried to do what he's always done, which is protect her, and she doesn't want it anymore. And there's a scene immediately after this where he's sitting on the. I actually forgot to talk about the garage scene, but there was a scene earlier where he came in to check on Ellie and noticed that her guitar, she hasn't been playing it. He's like, oh, I'll get it new strings, and kind of just leaves. And he's fixed the guitar on the balcony after the dance. And they both see each other. They share a look. Joel looks like he kind of wants to apologize or just talk it out. And Ellie just walks straight by without saying anything. Let's talk about this whole scene. This was probably my most anticipated moment from the game to see how it translated. I expected that it would be pretty faithfully adapted, but somehow it was just like gave me all the same feelings when I watched it the first time. So, did you feel similar?
Yeah, this was the number one thing from The Last of Us Part 2 that I was, like, looking forward to seeing. It's my favorite scene in the game. It's the first time we saw gameplay of the game, I'm
Yep.
pretty sure, with that demo. I love that demo. Just shout out to that demo when they're dancing and they go in for the kiss and they're kissing and the camera, like, pans behind her head and gets caught in the dark of her hair, and then we pick up and we're in, like, somewhere else and it's pouring rain and she's got a knife in someone's neck, and then we go into this whole battle sequence and we come back. That's, like, one of my favorite gameplay demos
Mm.
ever. And this was, like, shot for shot. Like, there's some subtle camera differences to the way we introduce Ellie in the dance, but, like, the camera coming in behind her with all the lights stirring up, like, it's pretty amazing what they did here. And I think that, I mean, Craig has said it many times before talking about making the show. He's like, some things like from this franchise were perfectly made for the screen, whether it be big screen, small screen, like it perfectly made for adaptation that we just did not need to touch. And that's what they do here. Every line is essentially what we get before. We get the, oh, I give you guys 2 weeks or whatever to Jesse at the beginning. Oh, she's dancing up a storm to Dina. Dina comes over, does just like she does in the game, grabs the drink out of Jesse's hand, swigs it
Hmm.
down, gives it back to him. And then the comp, like, if there was any doubt, not that I didn't know if there would be chemistry between Bella and Isabel, but you don't know. Like, you don't know until it happens. And when they're out there and the music slows down and they just start talking, and it's like, this is perfect. Like, this was like the high moment of the episode for me. And they're holding each other, and it's basically line for line. The, like, why are they all looking at me? I'm not a threat. They shouldn't be afraid of me. Maybe they should. And it's just like, this is, ugh, like, this is The Last of Us Part 2 to me. And surprised that we leave that and go and get the little guitar, like, patio moment, because that's like You
It's
want
the
to
end.
talk about playing? Yeah, you want to talk about playing the game with the show, Lauren. You would have had to have beaten the game by now because I think that's like
Yeah.
the last cutscene we get before the very end of the game. But
Well,
like
it is,
this
but they
whole
cut it.
dance sequence,
We don't see what actually happens,
no, we don't.
which I think we'll
Um,
return to later.
but like yeah, this whole dance sequence for me is like okay, this like I am ready to go on this journey again because this foundation of the Ellie and Dina relationship, which I find like to be the light, at least on this side of the Last of Us Part 2 story, the like kind of like thing that I want to keep holding on to, and I'm willing to put myself through the emotional turmoil and abuse that I will put myself through over the next however many hours of the game. It's this relationship that I keep coming back to. That's like, okay, but I want to get back to them. I just want them to be happy.
Yeah, The Last of Us is so good at building these like intimate character relationships, particularly because you're put in the shoes of playing these characters. But sometimes you'll play a character in a game and you just don't care. You care about whatever special abilities they have or just progressing through the world. But this is more like, no, I actually genuinely care about what happens to this character. I remember thinking all throughout The Last of Us Part 2, I was terrified that Ellie was going to die. Um, every waking moment, I was just scared of every cutscene that came because I thought that she might be killed off. Because they're not afraid to do things like that. But it's interesting because the dance sequence, when it was like released in that trailer and stuff, it was quite significant in the like I guess video game world because they had done motion capture and the physics of getting two characters to kiss are quite difficult.
The way
So
their noses like fold against each other in the game
yeah.
is like I remember that being a big talking point. They're like,
Well, I
"Whoa,
think
I've
they
never
actually
seen like."
got the actors to do it so that they could map it
Oh,
correctly.
I would not doubt that.
Yeah. So really that's a lot of the focus in that scene in the game. Or so in the show, they almost have to work harder to kind of upsell the relationship, and they just do it so effortlessly. It's just 100% there. There was interesting though. After the scene, the people around me were like, "Oh, but is it for real? Like, if she's just playing with her, I'm gonna like hunt Dina down, kind of thing." Because you have that beautiful line of like, "I think they should be terrified of you," which is just such a great line, and is so
And
genuine.
such a great like almost thesis statement for the rest of the story. Like that's like
Yeah,
I think that like first time we saw that scene in that gameplay demo and we immediately cut and she's has her knife in the throat of someone like that's like very
yeah.
purposefully done. Like that like it's very clearly alluding to yeah like they should be terrified of you because I'm about to steal your heart and like like we are each other's now, but also like you're you're Ellie. Like like you could mess up their shit if you really wanted to.
Yeah, well, particularly in the game, there's like that dichotomy of like we have these wonderful character moments and cutscenes, and you come here for that. But then straight after that, when you cut into the violent gameplay, you're like, oh, and we also come here for this. And I think there's both halves of that are represented in the show in this season, but in this episode. But yeah, it was a wonderful scene. It was great to just see it come to life exactly as is, but with like slight new flourishes, and to see it with the take of the actors on these characters, which was really cool. Um, and the only last thing I want to touch on in the episode is the last thing we see, which is two things actually, two looming threats. There are tendrils of cordyceps fungus growing in the pipes that they've unearthed that look like they're going to like come into the town of Jackson, which is like that's not a good sign. And then there is also the arrival of Abby and the Salt Lake City crew in the snow. At the end of the episode, it's taken them 5 years to find Joel, but here they are. They're about to enter Jackson for next episode. So that sets things up for a pretty big episode next week. Is there anything you want to talk about at the end? That
No, the tendrils is just like I think that is to end up like what we're expecting to happen soon. There's that shot in the trailer of all the like infected running at Jackson, and that's not something from the game, but
yeah,
I think that's
there's a
what's happening. And
bloater.
I is it?
Well, there's a bloater in the scene with Tommy.
Oh, yeah, well, I think that's all coming.
Yeah,
Um, and it is interesting to me that, like, the tendrils coming into this town, it's all they're doing. They didn't have to open up those, like didn't have to open up those things, the pipes or whatever. maybe it would have just continued to grow anyways. But like the fact that now it's exposed, like that's freaky. Don't like it at all. And then yeah, the introduction again of Abby at the very end. She looks there's a particular shot really close on her face right at the end there. It was like, oh my gosh, like that looks just like the character model from the game. All you need is like a little like blood running down her nose or whatever, and it was just like that is spot on Abby. Um, I'm scared. I
Not
don't
running
like.
down her nose? Does she have
Yeah,
nose
there's like
bleeds?
I don't know. I have this picture of Abby in the snow for some reason. There's a moment when you really early in the game when you were controlling Abby where the camera pans around. You're with Owen on that morning walk, and you meet Infected, and she gets a bloody nose at one point.
Oh, okay. Don't remember.
And like there's this I have this yeah this very specific image in my mind where she's like has like blood running down her face in that toque and that jacket and the like
Sure.
fighter braid down the back of her neck.
Yeah. I liked that it was a bookend that you open with Abby and you end reminding us of the threat that she's coming. I'm interested to see what happens next week, whether they do any of the scenes of them in like the ski lodge or any of the parts of like how much time we'll spend with Abby or versus because not to get into spoilers, like, when you play the game and you learn like Abby's intentions and what actually she does with them, it all comes as a shock and you are left wondering why. And I'm sure we'll get into this in the next episodes, but with this, it's just interesting because we don't, as you play as her in the game, but you don't have that in the show. So I'm just interesting how much of her viewpoint we'll see before it kind of like shifts away, if it does shift away.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still so just maybe even a little weary of like how are we going to piece all of these things together? Just looking at like
Hmm.
the new additions like this like horde, this mob that's going to supposedly come to Jackson. How do we then like is that before we like how like are we gonna get Dina and Ellie in Eugene's farm
Yeah,
like you
I
see
wondered
early in
that
the game?
too.
Because how does that make sense if we know what's happening now? And then how do we get I don't want to like spoil things too deeply, but how do we get the thing to happen
Yeah, I
if
know.
there's a horde of zombies attacking Jackson?
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to piece it together. I don't. Um, but I trust
And
in
the
them.
thing
I
is that
know
the
that
thing, just
it'll hit
spoiler
hard.
wise, they all wake up and it was all a dream. So
That's right.
there you go.
Famous ending of The Last of Us. Yeah, it's I feel like I was the same. I was watching these scenes and like even reordering like with having all those scenes in Jackson that are establishing like some of them are from reinvented from the series the game and some of them are not, and it works. It absolutely works the way that they've done it, but I was sitting there questioning being like, whoa, does this mean we don't get like the patrol scene with Dina Ellie going to Eugene's like farm and having the blunt scene and stuff like that? Like I'm sure they'll find a way to retool it so that, or I hope they find a way to retool it so we get that scene, but then maybe we don't and the dance is all we've got. And which I'm still happy with, but I think to progress their relationship enough for what happens in their journey, like I think you need something extra just to confirm that like Dina's serious on
Yeah,
her
so you
feelings
don't
for
have
Ellie. It
people
wasn't
like
just the
the
drink
the
stalking.
people in your room yesterday
Yeah,
saying
who were questioning her
you need
intentions.
to lock this down. Like you need to
Yeah,
as a creative team, you need to tell the audience like no, like this isn't because Dina, even when she's talking to her at the dance, she's like, "Oh, I'm so high right now." It's like, okay, you're just adding a little bit of like, just a little bit of uncertainty in there that she could just be like, she could wake up tomorrow and whether she does remember it or not, be like, "Oh yeah, like I blacked out."
yeah, it could be like, oh, sorry, we shouldn't have done that. Like you're my best friend, or sort of thing. So that's something that needs to be answered next episode, and I hope they do it through the scene that they did it in the game, but all will be revealed. I have a couple of things I want to talk about overall. I really was thinking hard about Ellie in this episode, particularly because again of how people around me were reacting, where they were saying like, "Oh, she's just become a little brat. Like, why is she so annoying?" And why is she like acting like this? And I think there is like a lot of love in the community for Pedro and Joel, and Pedro as Joel. So I think people don't really like to like see anyone be mean to him and stuff like that. But you got to remember,
Yeah,
like I
well,
watched episode 9 before this, and I was like, he freaking killed everyone, guys. He's not a good guy. Like, depending where you fall on the scale, like, personally, I think he didn't make the right decision. But yeah, people in the room were like, "Oh, she's so annoying. He should have just left her to die with the fireflies." And I'm like, that's the point. You're supposed to debate over that topic.
Hmm.
Um, but it's interesting that I think Bella's portrayal, or at least how she's being written, is Ellie's just a little bit more aggressive in her kind of childlike nature, which I think is probably more true to the character that Bella is built as Ellie versus what Ashley Johnson built in the game. Because I think in the game, Ellie still has like a great sense of humor. She's still very lovable, but she does feel a little bit like older and wearier. She's just a little bit like less willing to engage in certain things. Whereas this Ellie has like a lot more energy. She just wants to get out there and do things. She just like, and violence is kind of her way of doing that. She just wants to be reckless and like show that she can do things because she's had so much agency taken away from her by what Joel did. So I just found that interesting that there's these like quite different portrayals that Ashley and Bella have done, which is continuing in season two.
Yeah, I am. I think it's a different direction than Ashley took it in The Last of Us Part Two, but I'm okay with it. I think this is a different Ellie, and it's funny talking to people who don't have the experience of the games, like our coworkers at the Direct I've had conversations with, and they're like, I look at that Ellie from the games and think like, who is that person? Like that's not Ellie. And whereas to me, I look at Bella and I'm like, this is Ellie, but it is a very clearly different Ellie. And
Mm,
she also in this, like when we pick things up here, like she's lashing out. Like this isn't her just the way she's going to be for the rest of the season. Like she's something has happened between the two of them, between Joel and Ellie, and she is she's like she one, I don't think she owes him anything. Like he kind of took her agency away at the end of season 1, and I've always thought at the end of The Last of Us Part 1, even when I finished it for the first time, I'm like, "Oh my god, like I was the bad guy. I was playing Joel. I was the villain, and I was waiting for that choice to be like, do I sacrifice the girl? Do I kill the girl or whatever? And it never came. And then we go to where we are. And I've always been okay with that. Like I've always like I can see in my head how Joel gets to that decision because
yeah.
he's lost everything. Like he hasn't he has had nothing to fight for, and he now has something to fight for. That's not the issue I've had with the ending of The Last of Us. An issue, like I love the ending of The Last of Us. I love that we have conversations about it. But like my thing is, I don't think I was the bad guy for, yeah, I murdered all of those people, but I saved the thing that I loved, and that's like that's really shitty. But you get Ellie out of it. It's the lying
Yeah.
to her. It's the going to that next step and being like, when she knows something is up and asks him, "Tell me what happened," and he says nothing, and then that's it. I think that that is like, yeah, murder's bad, but like that's the cardinal sin for me in that relationship. Like now everything, everything that you've built with this person, including grabbing her and taking her out of that hospital, now is like could be blown down with a gust of wind because you've just like he should have, I think that he should have told her the truth in that moment. So we now jump 5 years and she's had to stew on that, whether she believes that answer she got at the end of season 1 or not. And then we have events that happen between then. She's had to stew on that. And that's why we find her in this like childish, like angsty, I'm going to sit in the garage, turn up the music and be a little brat mode, because like she's she has now had to deal with for the last 5 years, subconsciously or full on knowing that the one person, the one anchor lied to her and took her agency away. And I think that that's like that's why we're here with this character.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, well, for starters, the whole irony of the situation is that Joel did everything, the most unimaginable things to save Ellie, and then his the things that he did ended up making him lose her anyway. So it's like the woulda, coulda, shoulda. But again, what I was interested in hearing from the people who are watching with me is just like they just like painting Ellie as a brat. Like, why is she acting like this? And they really want to know what went down. And I just found that interesting that, like, we're not going to probably get the revelation of that information for quite a while. Like, you can probably piece together that it's probably something to do with the big lie that he told her, but the actual finesse of that situation isn't revealed until later. And so I think it's like an interesting storytelling choice that like could potentially make people dislike Ellie for the majority of the season, depending on how she acts, like going forward. So, I mean, we know, and are accepting of it. But for people who don't, I just found that interesting that like there was a little less sympathy towards her.
I think that'll change very quickly. Once we get Ellie
Yeah,
on the journey that she's going to start going on, it's going to very quickly become like, I am on this like, I will live and die with this person. And then you'll have to come back and think about that even deeper as we get even deeper into the story. But for where we're going in the next, I think, like few episodes and into the latter half of the season, I think people are going to put their reservations about Bella and Ellie aside very quickly, because they are going to be on the same journey that she is on, and have to reconcile with those feelings when comeuppance
yeah.
comes to happen.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's just why it's interesting when we know the complete picture and other people don't, just like how they're drip feeding the story. It's very fascinating to me. The only other thing I wanted to bring up is something that I learned listening to the Last of Us official podcast, where Craig and Neil said we'd learn more about Seth, homophobic Seth. So they did mention that he would be coming back and we'd learn about where he came from and things like that. So I was like, oh, don't think I needed more from that character, but I'm interested to see what you do.
We're getting a whole episode. 1/7 of this
That's
season
Bill and
is just going to
Frank.
be Seth's origin story. I think that they mentioned something in the podcast about him that I didn't think about in The Last of Us Part 2, when he shows up and he says that what he says, gets pushed around, is a homophobic asshole. Um it is kind of like, that's really shitty. The world ended in 2013. There are still, I mean, here in 2025, there's still people who have really, really problematic opinions on that sort of thing. But they said something in the podcast where in this universe, the world ended in 2003, where things were even further behind, further back in time. And so like, you can like, I like, you can draw the line from how this guy continues to be this guy and gets to be this guy here in the like the dance scene. And I thought that was like an interesting note that I didn't really think about. But it's like, yeah, like gay marriage wasn't legalized until, I don't know, it was like 2006 or 2007 in the United States. Like, that never happened. People are even more close-minded in this version of the story than they would have been in the 2013 version of the story from the game. So that was like a cool little note. Again, Last of Us podcast, just like,
It is
listen to
great.
us first, obviously, and then
Yeah, yeah.
go give them a
Yes,
listen.
but
They need it, I'm sure.
we may rehash some points that they've talked about. So yeah, interested to see how that goes from there. So this season for our reviews of The Last of Us, I've added a few categories that we can just run through at the end of each episode, which we might, I guess, do now. So I wanted to know what your best moment from the show was this episode.
It was the dance. It was the slow dance. Music slows down, holding in close, and the kiss. Just, oh, chef's kiss, if I might say. Like, yeah, it might be the moment of the season. I hope it's not the moment of the season by the time we're done, because like, we have a lot of show to go. But
Yeah,
it was really good. It was really good.
I'm in agreement. That was my favorite moment as well, and a really strong way to start the show, particularly because you have to wait so long for that moment in the game. So it was really great to see that. Straight up, best performance and all line. Mine was Isabel Merced. Just blew me out of the water with the way that she's bringing Dina to life. Just like so much charisma, so much riz, as the kids say. Just like really, really excited to like go on have her as a regular in the show. That was my favorite performance.
Yeah, she's my favorite performance, but just to give another shout out, Catherine O'Hara as Gale. Like,
Oh
I
yeah,
was so excited to see what she would do in this show, and Moira Rose is there, and she's just killing it, just eating up scenery with Pedro. I loved it.
I liked at the end of the dance sequence how she's just like kind of sitting back in the corner with like a drink. I'm like,
Mhm.
that's a queen. And then your favorite Easter egg from the game
It's the
to the
bottle.
show.
I'm keeping a bottle count now.
Are
I
you
wanna
reading my
see if we get
document?
It's gotta be the
Yeah,
bottle.
I love the bottle. But I also want to shout out like the crooked still inclusion, which was
Mhm.
just so special, particularly in that dance scene, which was already my favorite moment, just to be like, oh, you even brought the entire band into play. That's so cool. Loved that. And then just quickly, do we want to share what we think might happen next week? I know I did a lengthy prediction last week in the primer, but as we learn what is actually happening, that will probably update and change. So, what do you think's in store for episode 2?
I think next week, will be the episode. I think next week we have the inciting incident, of season 2. But outside of that, I think we're gonna go to Eugene's farm or not tomorrow, next week. I think we will get that sequence between, Dina and Ellie, and I think it's gonna happen next week. I don't know how they weave it in. Maybe they have to go on some sort of reconnaissance thing, um, because they discovered the tendrils maybe, and
Yeah.
or they notice the horde kind of building somewhere, and they're like, "Oh, can you go check this out?" But I think we have to send them I think we have to do that. I think that is one of the beats we have to cover, and we can do that, separate other characters, and then culminate in just emotional devastation.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's been a few like option moments throughout the show where you see other opportunities for them to get like weed. Gail's got it thanks to Joel, who found it somewhere. I don't really know where. Dina came in saying that she was high. So I wonder if they need to physically go to like Eugene's farm or not, or whether they might just be the same moment, but maybe it just happens in Jackson or in Ellie's garage.
But
I
it's
don't know.
not even the smoking the weed that is, like, such a big moment for me there, it's the being ice because it's like the snowstorm
Yeah.
comes in, they need like, it's that's that moment of isolation where they have to stay where they are for a few hours, and then yeah, there is substances consumed, but it is more the, like, the 2 of them, like, snuggling
Being
up
trapped.
together and, yeah, like, really cementing that that kiss wasn't just a one-time thing.
Yeah, and for that to happen, I think they can't be in Jackson when this attack happens. What's interesting is like Tommy and Joel are together during the scene, but we see that Tommy is clearly in Jackson fighting the infected in the trailers. So I just don't know how they're gonna like get the right groups of people together. Um,
Mhm.
but I
Or
I'm
does the
very
horde does, like I can see a world in which this horde attack wipes out a lot of Jackson, and like, it happens, like, before Ellie decides to, like, go off and go on her adventure, like, to go on her journey. Like, I could see it, like, it comes in, it decimates almost everyone, and then Tommy comes to Ellie and is like, "Hey, like, maybe even, like, if this is, like, gonna happen, it has to happen now. We have no resources, like, even just, like, outreach, needs to go on."
I'm
Like,
not
I could
sure
see it
because
being like
like
a
Tommy has
mass
to go,
killing
right?
event. Yeah, I guess.
Like, and I think that if this town was decimated, he wouldn't be leaving, even if it is for revenge.
What if it was decimated to the point that it's like, it's done? Like, there's no coming back to it.
Well, like Maria and Benji die, maybe. That
Yeah.
would be rough. Don't know. But anyway, I think you're right. Big battle sequences come in next episode, and I think it's going to end with the thing. So I am not emotionally ready at all. And I'm sure next week, if goes as we have predicted, will be a very difficult podcast to talk about.
I'm not looking for like, I didn't make it through the previously on before I was just, like, had tears in my eyes, and then I cried 2 or 3 times throughout the episode. But, like, it's just this story means so much, and I'm just like, I'm not looking forward to the quote unquote discourse around the rest of this season. Like maybe that's why I
Yeah,
haven't been excited. I'm just like,
because you know
ah,
it's going to be traumatic.
yeah, it's gonna be
That
awful.
being said, at least it'll be out there. At least we can talk about it.
I know.
We don't have to keep being
For
like, "Oh,
2
but the
years, I've been
thing."
dancing around things with people.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, I'm so excited for season 2, Klein, what's it like?" And I'm like, "Well,
Yeah.
season 1 was all about hope, and this one is not."
Yeah. It's a difficult show to watch, and is probably like something that this episode reminded me of. It's an incredibly violent show, and it's an incredibly violent game as well. But I think you don't think about it when you're playing a game because it is, after all, a game. And there are moments that remind you, and it is intended to be a very brutal game. But there were parts in this that I was like, oh, I think I'm desensitized a little bit to this, and have to be reminded that like very incredibly difficult, violent things that they're doing, and not in our everyday life. We just don't come across people like that all the time. So it's a hard story.
Yeah. Anything else? Is that it for episode 1?
That's us.
Awesome. Okay. Well, before we go, we're going to do a quick what we've been playing, and then we will get out of here. Lauren Rouse, what have you been playing? You mentioned The Last of Us Part 2, so I'm assuming that that has kind of been your gaming time.
Yeah, that's what I've been dedicated to this week, at least. I'm up to. I mean, I kind of just tried to stop where the episode did, so I think I'm like mid patrol with Ellie and Dina because of the way they've restructured things. So I'm about to go to Eugene's farm. But that's all I've had time for this week. And something I will do, hopefully today, maybe tomorrow, is I like doing the side by sides where I can of things that how they look in the game versus how they've done it in the show. So I'll try and get a few of those comparison images up.
Your poor PS5 hard drive going to be full of Last of Us Part 2 screenshots. The only game that I've been playing that I'll mention is this game kind of caught like fire last week, and so I thought I'd give it a try. It's free on PlayStation Plus right now if you want to try it. Game Pass as well. Blueprints. Have you heard about this, Lauren?
What is this?
This game came out of nowhere, um, and reviews dropped last week, and people are instantly like, "This is Game of the Year 2025. This is one of the best games I've ever played." And so I've started it. It is a puzzle game, and it's a puzzle roguelike, which is just a very interesting kind of mixture where you are in this house attempting to get to the like into the deepest depths of the house, and you're almost like building a deck of rooms. So every time you enter a room, it draws 3 different rooms that could possibly be there, and you pick it. And there's puzzles in each room. There's puzzles that span the entire house. Like, it's really hard to describe. I have about 8 pages of notes. I look like the Zodiac killer with just like, this means this, and this means this. And I've played for maybe 7 or 8 hours. I don't feel like I've made a lot of progress, but it's like if I was to describe it as something, it'd be like a mix of Hades and The Witness from like the PS4 generation, where there's just puzzles all over this house, and I'm really enjoying it. I don't most of these puzzle games I find like I'm not nearly smart enough for, whereas this, every time I feel like, oh man, I think I've hit my wall, I like find a magnifying glass item and look at a picture, and it's like, wait, in that picture there's a like I can look at the magnifying glass and there's a code written on this tree, and now I can go over to this padlock that I saw earlier and use the code, and it opens up this whole like other like portion of both my mind and the game. And so I'm liking it. We'll see if I see all the way through, because it is like I am starting to get to the point where there are some things that are quite hard, but I'm doing chemistry. I'm doing like I had to get out a calculator the other day. It is bizarre. Like there's just puzzles everywhere, and even things that you think there's no way that this is ever going to come back to mean anything. 2 hours later, you're like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm so glad I wrote down Queen of Diamonds on my piece of paper, and it'll
Wow,
later come back." Like it's pretty remarkable. So it's
it's really
called
making you work
Blueprints.
for it.
Yeah, it is very much making you work for it, but I'm not finding it too like, it is obtuse for sure. I'm not finding it too obtuse. Like, I have played some of these games where I look at it and like, I I can't. Unless I'm writing every piece of dialogue down or every single item I find, like there's no way I'm ever going to crack this code. This to me, it does feel a little bit more manageable. So if you want to give it a try, it's free on Game Pass. It's free on PlayStation Plus. It's Blueprints, but like Prince is Prince. So
Oh, okay,
yeah, like the royal prince. And yeah,
cool.
it's really good. I haven't played a lot of 2025 games, but it's probably the best game I've played in 2025 so far. The only other one would be Assassin's Creed. So I'm loving it. Want to see it to the end, I hope. I hope. There's just they're giving me a drip feed, just enough. Just enough to like I figure things out and go, "Oh, like now I can go and I need to try that on this thing," and it is really cool. So I'm liking that. But yeah, if you want to let us know what you've been playing, you can do so over on social media. You can follow us. We are at Controller Club Pod on Instagram and Blue Sky, as well as at controller_club on Twitter, controller.club on TikTok as well. And while you're over there, please let us know what you thought of The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 1. You can chime in the comments on this YouTube video down below, comments over on Spotify as well. We'd really like it if you could interact and let us know your thoughts. Did you enjoy it? Have you played the game? I'd really like to hear from people who maybe haven't played the game. Let us know what they think about it so far, because I just want to know if I'm coming in with all this Last of Us Part 2 baggage. But yeah, that's basically going to do it for the show. Please rate, review us as well. And if you want to send us an email, you can do so, controllerclubpod@gmail.com. Lauren, where can people keep up with you?
You can follow me at lrouse19 on the socials. I've got some new stuff this week. I put up a clip on my TikTok, just throwing back to an interview I did for the Fall Guy, where they've announced a stunt Oscar. So we're just celebrating that on my TikTok. And I, like Klein, have written a bunch of articles on the Direct regarding The Last of Us. We've got stuff on Eugene. We've got stuff on Dina. We've got stuff on Stalkers. So go over to thedirect.com to find those.
Excellent. You can keep up with me everywhere. I'm at the Kleinfelt, TheKleinFelt, just like Lauren, doing Last of Us coverage for thedirect.com. And in a couple weeks here, gonna start the Andor ball rolling again. So get excited for that. Gonna have dueling great TV all happening at the same time. It's amazing. That's going to do it for this episode of Controller Club, or Cordyceps Club, I guess this time. You can see us next week for episode 2 of season 2 of The Last of Us. Thank you so much for listening. Now, let's get gaming.